Hello there, and welcome to Murder Most British. I'm Zach, the American, as you can probably tell.
Hiya there, I'm Rachel, I'm the Brit.
Hiya.
Hey there. He laughed because I take the mickey out of him every time he's like, hey there.
So, anyways, I wanted to do something for special, like a special episode. So this is like a cultural episode because when I first moved to the UK, I had no idea what bonfire night was, and then someone mentioning like burning a Guy Fawkes in a field. I'm like, are you burning some dude named Guy in a field somewhere? Like, is this a crime?
Well, it's not quite like that, but do you remember I took you to your first bonfire night with the fireworks and kids all running around with sparklers and stuff? They had a stuffed dummy called Guy Fawkes tossed on the top of the flames.
Yeah. I was like, what the hell is going on?
I was actually surprised you've never done like bonfire like night and stuff like that, but obviously it's very true to like British culture, so British history.
Yeah, well, especially England.
Yeah.
Only in Britain that you would turn an attempted act of mass murder into a national holiday, like with sparklers and toffee apples and all that. Yay!
Us English are great, aren't we? Well, that's bonfire night for you.
Yeah, that's weird.
A little history, a little horror, and a lot of fire.
Well, it does go back a ways, so we're going back to where it all started in November of 1605. A plot to blow up Parliament. A handful of fanatics, or, they would think that they were freedom fighters, or no, and a man whose failure became legend.
Well, London, midnight, the 4th of November, 1605. A man stands in the half-dark beneath Parliament. The air is damp, heavy with coal dust and the faint metallic scent of gunpowder. He checks his timepiece, a rare thing in those days, and fingers the slow match coiled at his belt. 36 barrels sit behind him, enough to shatter stone and flesh alike, to erase a king and a kingdom in one flash of fire. His name, he says, is John Johnson. It isn't, though. By dawn, the world will know him as Guy Fawkes, and his failure will change Britain for centuries to come.
At first, I thought that was Don Johnson. I was like, no, he was in Miami Vice. No, wait. No, John Johnson. Okay. So, it's England, 1603. Elizabeth I is dead, and the long shadow of her reign still lies across the realm. For nearly half a century, Protestantism has been the official faith. For the small but stubborn Catholic minority, survival has meant compromise, secrecy, and fear. Priests hide in hollow walls, mass is whispered in cellars. The penalties for practicing the old religion is fines, imprisonment, and sometimes even death, are meant to break the spirit. But persecution only breeds a deeper conviction that they are God's forgotten soldiers.
When James, the 6th of Scotland, inherits the English throne in 1603, becoming James I, hope stirs among Catholics. James's mother Mary, Queen of Scots, a Catholic martyr in the eyes of Rome. Surely her son would be more tolerant. Early rumours confirm it. Recusancy fines are relaxed. Informers kept at bay. For a few months, England breathes easier.
You would be excited if you were a Catholic at the time, going, we're not going to have to hide anymore, and we can be free to have the religion that we see fit for ourselves, their own personal relationship with their religion.
Well, yeah, and also if it was the Catholic was the biggest sort of religion before, then obviously just changing your faith, just like that, just because a king has said, oh, well, you need to do this now. I think you're already instilled in the Catholic religion. So, I don't think that just goes away overnight. So, yeah.
But the goodwill dies quickly. Under pressure from his Protestant advisors and desperate to prove his loyalty to the Church of England, James renews the very laws he once hinted he'd repeal. Oh, that sucks. Old finds return, priests are hunted again, and whispers of secret Catholic meetings resurface in London taverns.
Among those listening is Robert Catesby, a gentleman from Warwickshire. Catesby is 33, tall, charismatic, and dangerously persuasive. His father had been imprisoned for harbouring priests. The family wealth had been bled by fines. Catesby carries that humiliation like a wound that never closes. He is deeply religious, but his faith has twisted into obsession. To him, England's persecution of Catholics isn't politics. It's an offence against God himself.
Catesby had already flirted with rebellion once, joining the Essex Rising in 1601, a desperate, half-planned attempt to seize power. When that failed, he was fined heavily and left broken but not cured. To his mind, peaceful petitions and patient prayers have achieved nothing. Only violence can set things right.
In the spring of 1604, Catesby begins to gather men who think as he does. The beginnings of what will become the Gunpowder Plot. Thomas Wintour, scholarly and loyal, brings caution and contracts abroad. John Wright, a skilled swordsman and old friend from school, brings courage. Soon they are joined by Thomas Percy, a retainer of the powerful Northumberland family and a gentleman pensioner in the King's bodyguard. The man who will later lease an undercroft beneath the House of Lords.
That word undercroft. Good stuff. But at first, their plan is vague. Perhaps a rebellion, perhaps an assassination. But Catesby wants something greater, something that will echo through history. He speaks of wiping away an entire government, king, lords, and bishops, in one stroke of divine fire. His allies listen in stunned silence. When he finishes, no one laughs.
They know it's suicide. They also know they'll follow him. Still, they lack one thing, someone who can make their fantasy work. Wintour set abroad to find support from Spain, returns with a new recruit, a soldier who had fought in the Catholic wars of the Netherlands. His name is Guido Fawkes, though in England he'll soon be called Guy.
Fawkes is different from the others. He's not a nobleman or a talker. He's a professional soldier, practical, disciplined, and calm under pressure. Years of siege warfare have taught him how to pack powder, how to time a fuse, how to bring down fortifications. To Catesby, he's the final piece of the puzzle, the man who can turn holy anger into physics.
Their early meetings are almost monastic in tone. Oaths sworn over Bibles, mass held in secret, a priest giving them communion. But this is no act of faith, it's a blood pact. They promise secrecy unto death. To them, the plot is not murder, it's purification by fire.
That's, holy oaths taken in secret. It's just like they need to do a movie now of this, of like these guys doing this stuff. It would be so awesome.
There's not been nothing made like before.
Probably, but like they did something now that would be awesome. It'd be such a great historical film. I'd be like, yes, I'm all in, man.
Yeah, I think it would be good.
Well, by the summer of 1604, the cell of conspirators is complete enough to act. By early 1605, they reportedly abandoned their tunnel and leased a coal cellar directly beneath the House of Lords, where the king will soon open Parliament. From above, the chambers echo with debates about loyalty and heresy. Below, the men dig, whisper, and dream of Judgment Day.
Yet, even amongst themselves, there are doubts. Some wonder if killing innocents, servants, messengers, even fellow Catholics, can ever be God's will. Catesby's answer is simple. In every war, the righteous must burn with the wicked. Across the river, life goes on. Apprentices drink, church bells mark the hours, merchants haggle in the markets. No one knows that beneath the city stones, a handful of men are laying the foundations for what would have been the most catastrophic act of domestic terror in English history.
The meetings continue quietly for months. Supplies are moved in barrels marked as firewood. The group expands slightly. More money, more hands, more secrecy. Each time Catesby looks at Fawkes, he sees not just a man, but a weapon. Fawkes himself remains an enigma, disciplined, devout, and eerily serene. He tells one confessor later that he never felt more certain of his purpose Then in those nights underground, quote, to do God's will, he says, a man must not fear death. Man, that's a great quote. He's like, yep, I got to do this. God's will, man. That goes hard.
Yep. By the autumn of 1605, everything is ready. Parliament will reopen on the 5th of November. A fuse will be lit, a match will burn, and in that moment, Robert Catesby believes he will remake England in fire. But the story doesn't begin in 1605. It begins the year before, in the spring of 1604, with a meeting and a plan.
Yeah, this kind of goes back to kind of shows how much actually went into I think some people think it was just spur of the moment or whatever, but I was like, I want to go back. Yeah, here's the plan, and this is what's going on, and you're getting there. But,
yeah, they definitely had a plan and sort of, didn't rush into doing it. They knew what they was doing. Yeah.
Yeah, it took a long time. So Thomas Percy, a gentleman of the King's Guard and a recent convert to Catesby's cause, he rented a property beside the Palace of Westminster. Officially, it's to house servants. Unofficially, it gives the conspirators a base almost within touching distance of Parliament, close enough to hear the debates through the walls.
Their first idea is primitive, but ambitious. Dig a tunnel beneath the House of Lords and bury England's government under its own foundations. They work in shifts by candlelight, scraping through London clay, sweating in silence. Every foot of progress feels like a prayer. The noise of carts, bells, and the restless Thames hides the rhythm of their shovels. Then fortune intervenes. Percy learns of a disused storage vault directly beneath the Lord's chamber, a roomy undercroft once used to store coal for the royal household. He secures it under his own name. The tunnel is reportedly abandoned. The perfect vault already exists.
Over the next year, that dark, damp cellar becomes the heart of the conspiracy. One by one, small shipments arrive, barrels marked as firewood and coal. Inside is gunpowder, 36 barrels in total, enough to shatter Westminster and erase the monarchy in a heartbeat. Guy Fawkes, the soldier of the group, takes command of the powder. He inspects each barrel, keeps it dry, checks the fuses and timing. He is steady, methodical, and utterly unflinching. Cold as iron and twice as steady, one witness would later recall.
Outside, London seethes. The plague delays the opening of Parliament for months. The King's Court retreats upriver to safer ground. Money grows short, suspicion longer. But Catesby's faith hardens with every delay. To him, each postponement is God's test of their resolve. By October 1605, the final date is fixed. The state opening of Parliament will be Tuesday, the 5th of November. Fawkes will light the fuse and escape by boat across the Thames. Catesby and his men will ride north to raise rebellion amid the chaos.
To them, it's not treason, it is purification. To the rest of England, it will be the end of the world. In late October 1605, the plan is complete. Barrels lie buried beneath Parliament's stone floor. The fuse has been tested. The boats are waiting on the Thames. Every man knows his part, but the conspiracy begins to fray in the one place they cannot control, the human heart.
On the evening of 26th October, Lord Monteagle, a Catholic noble with family ties to the conspirators, receives a strange letter. It is unsigned, written in a trembling hand, and delivered by a servant who claims he was told only to deliver it, quote, in haste. My lord, out of the love I bear to some of your friends, I would advise you, as you tender your life, to devise some excuse to shift your attendance at this Parliament, for they shall receive a terrible blow this Parliament, and yet they shall not see who hurts them.
Damn, that'd be a scary letter to get. Be like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, I mean, lucky for this lord, he was warned. Come on, you need to get the hell out of here.
Yeah. So it pretty much was like, bro, don't come to Parliament. Some shit's going down.
Yeah. I wonder who leaked it, though.
Monteagle reads the words twice. They chill him. Not the threat, but the intimacy of it. Someone close to him, someone who knows too much, is warning him away. He takes the letter directly to Robert Cecil, the king's chief minister, the most feared spy master in England. Cecil has spent years dismantling Catholic networks and knows the tone of treason when he reads it. Still, he hesitates. Such letters are often hoaxes designed to embarrass the crown.
This is where my British and my English and your English, American English, is weird because you called him Cecil.
Oh, it's Cecil.
We over here say Cecil, so...
No, I messed that one up.
No, I mean, I think that's the way that you Americans twist your words to how we twist them. So,
like we say Bernard.
But then now I'm thinking, do I say Cecil or do I say Cecil?
The way you say it. But just like when I say Bernard.
Yeah, I say Bernard.
Yeah.
So, yeah. For a week, the warning sits unanswered. Catesby and his men continue their final preparations. Fawkes checks the barrels, measures the fuses, and ensures the cellar remains undisturbed. Every hour feels heavier than the last. Then, on the afternoon of the 4th of November, King James I himself is shown the letter. The word blow catches his attention. He orders an immediate search of the undercrofts beneath Parliament.
That night, just before midnight, Sir Thomas Knevet, Keeper of Whitehall and Westminster Palaces, what a title, goodness, he led the search of the Palace of Westminster, leading a small group of guards through the shadowed chambers under the House of Lords. The air is damp, close, and silent, but for the drip of water and the shuffle of boots. In one chamber, they find stacks of firewood and coal, far more than any household could need, and standing beside them, a tall, bearded man dressed like a servant.
He introduces himself calmly. John Johnson, servant to Thomas Percy. Knevet, suspicious but polite, asks a few questions, finds nothing overtly amiss, and moves on, at first. But something in the man's stillness, his unblinking confidence, gnaws at him. Moments later, he orders his men back. They return, break open the stacks of firewood, and uncover the barrels. 36 of them. They seize the man immediately.
The name's Don Johnson. John. Oh, yeah. He was like.
My name's
confident.
John Johnson.
Yeah, that's just a very made up name. Like he did. I think at the time, people are like, he didn't act like a servant. He acted more upright, confident,
upper class, yeah.
Soldier-like, calm. And that's what tipped him off. Crazy how that confidence fucking came back to bite him when he's trying to play off that he's John Johnson. Well, in his pockets, they find a lantern, a timer, slow matches, and touchwood, everything needed to ignite a fuse. He doesn't resist. He doesn't even flinch. When questioned, he replies with eerie calm, quote, "A desperate fellow who would have blown the king and the whole company back to God." Yeah, man, another good line. Wow. But by dawn, Guy Fawkes is bound and broken on the floor of the Tower of London, still insisting he acted alone. Outside, London is in uproar. Church bells ring. Soldiers pour through the streets. The cry spreads from tavern to tavern. The papists have tried to blow up the king.
Within hours, the government begins rounding up known recusants and searching Catholic households. Parliament is sealed, the river patrolled, and the roads watched. The Gunpowder Plot, a plan years in the making, collapses in a single night. It came within hours of changing history forever.
Had Knevet's search been delayed until morning, Fawkes would have had the time to light the fuse before the state opening of Parliament, and Westminster itself might have vanished in fire. Just hours. That's what the difference was between England as it was and England erased.
When the morning sun rose over London on the 5th of November, Guy Fawkes was already broken and bound. By that same morning, about 80 miles away in Dunchurch, Warwickshire, the rest of the conspirators were gathering, still believing their plan had succeeded.
So let's have a little rundown, all right? So Robert Catesby, Thomas Percy, Thomas and Robert Wintour, Christopher and John Wright, Ambrose Rookwood, and a few others had been waiting for word. They expected to hear the explosion in the distance, or at least news of Parliament's destruction. Instead, a breathless rider brought the unthinkable. Guy Fawkes had been captured alive beneath Parliament, the powder discovered, and the plot exposed.
Silence followed, that kind of silence where no one wants to breathe first. They all knew what it meant. Their names would already be on royal lists. Their families questioned, their homes searched, panic rippled through the group. Some wanted to surrender, to throw themselves on the king's mercy.
Well, mercy wasn't in Catesby's vocabulary. He was a man who believed he'd been chosen for martyrdom, and he saw no point in dying quietly. "We're already dead," he told them. "Let us die together and like men." Ah, damn, man. Every time, as I was doing this up, every time they would come up with quotes, I'm like, dang.
You can just sort of transfer your self back to that time and the way that they spoke and conferred about everything.
I could see him like holding his sword up, like, let's die as men, like that, man. Within the hour, they were riding. 8 armed fugitives thundering north through the fog. The countryside, grey with frost, swallowed them whole.
They travelled first to Ashby St Ledgers, Catesby's family estate. Servants helped them load fresh weapons and armour, then to Norbrook, where they'd stored gunpowder. Though days of rain had soaked it through, every stop was slower, riskier. News of the plot's failure was spreading like wildfire. King James's men were already on the road. Every hour made the noose tighter.
From Norbrook, they rode west, still clinging to fantasy that if they could rally enough Catholics in the Midlands, they could spark an uprising. They called on Catholic families who'd once whispered sympathy for Rome. The Grants, the Littletons, and others. None of them opened their doors. The deeper they rode, the clearer it became. They were alone. That would be so frightening. They're like, nope, see you later, buddy. My neck's not going to be swinging next to yours.
November, their horses were failing and their supplies almost gone. At Warwick Castle, they saw their chance. The stables were full of the king's horses, and its stores held weapons and supplies for the local militia. Catesby ordered the gates forced.
They stormed the yard in a flurry of steel and shouting, muskets and pistols drawn. The keepers tried to resist, startled servants, not soldiers, but the conspirators were desperate men. The struggle broke out in the dark. One guard was struck down, others shoved aside as the raiders seized what they needed.
It was not murder, but it was violence. Raw, reckless, and public. In that moment, any dream of divine mission was gone. They were no longer saviours of their faith, but hunted traitors and thieves. The act that had been meant to purify England had curdled into robbery and fear.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's desperate men. But they loaded what they could. Powder, weapons, saddlebags of coin. Smoke and torchlight hung over the yard as bells began to toll across the town. When they galloped away into the cold November mist, the people of Warwick gathered in the streets, watching a handful of desperate men fleeing from the ruin of their own cause.
By the next morning, they were fugitives in the truest sense. Royal proclamations were sent across the Midlands, traitors of the gunpowder treason, to be taken dead or alive. They still had hope, not for victory, but for control over how they would die. As Robert Wintour later wrote, quote, "We rode to meet our graves as soldiers, not thieves."
But the line between soldier and thief was already gone. They would raid again and again, growing more reckless with each mile, until all that remained of the Gunpowder Plot was a burned house, a pile of bodies, and the echo of musket fire over Staffordshire fields.
By the night of the 7th of November 1605, the fugitives were running on fumes, cold, soaked and starving. They had ridden nearly 100 miles since dawn, through villages where every door was barred and every bell signalled pursuit. Their powder was damp, their horses exhausted, and their numbers dwindling. The countryside they once called home had turned against them. In Warwickshire, Worcestershire and Staffordshire, local militia hunted the traitors like wild dogs. The king's men spread posters with their names and faces. Rewards promised for their heads.
Well, still, Robert Catesby refused to surrender, as I thought he would be like. He convinced the remaining conspirators, Thomas Percy, Thomas Winter, the Wright brothers, Ambrose Rookwood, John Grant, Everard Digby, Sir Everard Digby, and a few servants to push on toward a safe house owned by a friend of the faith, Stephen Littleton, at Holbeach House, near Stourbridge in Staffordshire. It would be their last refuge.
They arrived late that night, drenched and shivering, horses barely standing. The manor was old, its windows shuttered against the wind, its moat half frozen. Inside, Littleton's servants lit fires and brought bread, ale and bandages. For a brief moment, the fugitives could almost pretend they were safe again.
They counted their weapons, swords, pistols, muskets, and a few barrels of salvaged gunpowder, all soaked through from the rain. Catesby, desperate, ordered the powder dried by the hearth. It was a fatal mistake. Now, you don't want to stick that gunpowder next to the fire there.
Even if it's damp.
Yeah, I've been looking at it going, I don't know, man. I think I'm going to sit over on the other side of the room.
I'll be staying outside. A stray spark leapt from the fire, igniting the powder laid out on the floor. The explosion ripped through the room, blowing shutters off hinges and sending several men flying. Robert Catesby, John Grant, and Ambrose Rookwood were badly burned. Grant's eyes were scorched. He was nearly blinded, the air filled with choking smoke and the smell of burnt flesh.
Well, whoopsies. That would suck. You're like, we're safe. Boom. Dead. Almost dead.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, they're not dead yet.
Or if some of them so badly burned or injured, you'd be like, nah, I think I'm done now.
Yeah, especially the one that's almost blinded.
Yeah. Well, they planned to burn the government, and instead, they had set themselves alight. Outside, the sound of the explosion carried across the fields. It told the sheriff of Worcester exactly where to find them. Everything's just going against them.
Mm-hmm. At dawn on the 8th of November, the sheriff's men, about 200 armed militia, surrounded Holbeach House. Inside, Catesby's band numbered barely a dozen. They barricaded doors, loaded what guns they could, and waited. The sheriff's herald shouted for them to yield. Catesby shouted back, "We will not!" Then came the first volley.
It just reminds me of like every last stand, movies of the last stands in them.
Yeah.
That like the Alamo, the last, like we're not going to surrender. We'll can die before we surrender. This is just made for movies right here.
Definitely.
Musket balls tore through the walls and splintered the oak beams. Christopher Wright was the first to fall, shot through the chest. Moments later, John Wright collapsed beside him. Thomas Percy was hit next, a musket ball through the stomach. Catesby crawled to his side, blood streaming from his burned face. Together, the two men, once the architects of a new Catholic England, raised a sword in prayer. Another volley of gunfire cut them down where they knelt.
When the shooting stopped, 4 men lay dead. Robert Catesby, Thomas Percy, and Christopher and John Wright. The others, wounded or dazed, were taken alive. Thomas Wintour, arm shattered. Rookwood, half blind. Everard Digby, bleeding from the leg. They were all shackled and marched out into the yard. The sheriff's men stripped their bodies, displaying them in the courtyard for the crowd that had gathered. Catesby's burned hand still clutched a rosary. Someone pried it loose and threw it into the mud.
Oh, come on, man. You can't be doing that. Like, he's already dead. Like, have a little bit of respect for the dead. But they were traitors. That's what they...
And they probably didn't follow the religion that Catesby did.
Probably Protestants and all that. From Holbeach House, the prisoners were dragged back toward London. The same road they had ridden so confidently a week earlier. At every village, people lined the streets to jeer and throw stones. The dead were left behind, to be exhumed later, their heads mounted on pikes above Parliament's gates. The Gunpowder Plot was finished. The revolution that promised to bring England to its knees had ended with its leaders face down in the dirt of Staffordshire. In truth, the only thing the conspirators truly killed was their own cause.
But the blood they failed to spill at Westminster now seeped into the future of English Catholicism. What had begun as a mission to defend the faith ended by destroying what little trust remained between Catholics and the Crown. With every desperate act, every stolen horse, every musket fired in panic, they buried the hope of tolerance deeper into the ground. Their rebellion had no martyrdom left to claim. The only death was that of open Catholic resistance, condemned, outlawed, and feared for generations to come.
The Tower of London has seen countless prisoners, but few like Guy Fawkes. When he was dragged through its gates on the morning of November the 5th, his hands were bound, his face bruised, but his defiance still intact. He had given his name as John Johnson, servant to Thomas Percy, a lie even the guards didn't bother to write down. For 2 days he held out. When interrogators pressed him about his accomplices, he answered with silence. When they offered mercy for names, he smiled.
Didn't want to give him up?
You don't rat.
No. Snitches get stitches.
Yeah.
Well, King James himself authorised what came next. In his own handwriting, he ordered that John Johnson be put to gentler tortures first, and if he refused to yield, to the harsher. The gentler meant manacles and thumbscrews. The harsher meant the rack.
Put him on the rack. Yeah, that's crazy. Gentle as manacles and thumbscrews. No thanks. Good God.
No, that's scary and painful.
But they had conviction, and they're like, we're doing this for a reason. I'm going to take whatever. But the lieutenant of the Tower, Sir William Wadd, recorded Fawkes's transformation. On the first day, he was stout and resolute. By the second, his body was broken and disjointed. When he finally signed his confession, his signature was barely a mark. The letters of his name, Guy Fawkes, scrawled like a child's hand, shaking from pain. You can still see it today, preserved in the National Archives, the physical proof of torture pressed into parchment.
Poor
That's
Guy.
crazy.
I do have sympathy for the guy.
Well, he just tried to,
I still have sympathy for the guy.
A mass act of fucking terrorism, pretty much.
I'm too soft.
No.
Well, under agony, Fawkes named names. He confirmed what the government had already suspected, that Robert Catesby, Thomas Percy, the Wright brothers, and others were part of the plot. He added the names of those captured alive: Thomas Wintour, Ambrose Rookwood, Everard Digby, John Grant, Robert Keyes, and others. Each was hunted, arrested, and brought in chains to the Tower.
Everybody breaks. Enough torture. Everybody breaks. No matter how good, good of a man or stout, resolute, after a while, it takes it out of you and you just, no more.
Yeah, I think there's only so much physical pain you could take.
Well, torture turned into confession. Confession turned into confession again. The government needed a story, one simple enough to terrify and unify a divided nation. Cecil, or Cecil as I like to say, his men drafted official accounts, editing the conspirators' own words into a narrative of divine deliverance. Pamphlets appeared almost immediately. The discovery of the most horrible treason. London's printers couldn't even keep up.
In taverns and churches alike, people read about the papist villains who had plotted to burn their king alive and thanked God for the miracle of deliverance. The propaganda was working, the Gunpowder Plot had failed, but the government's story of salvation was a success.
Never let a good crisis go to waste.
That's the saying.
You just got to spin it. And this was perfect for them. They could say, this was God's will. We found him. We were delivered by God's grace, that we weren't all blown up and killed.
Yeah, that they were able to stop it.
Mm-hmm. And it strengthened their Protestant base and their claims and all this, They're like, well, God's looking out for us, So, yep. But on the 27th of January, 1606, The surviving 8 conspirators were brought to Westminster Hall for trial, the very place where 2 months earlier they had hoped to commit mass murder. The hall was draped with black cloth and crowded with spectators, nobles, judges, and curious onlookers, eager to see the men who had almost ended England.
They were charged with high treason to blow up the king, queen, prince. Fawkes stood pale and thin, hands twisted from the rack. He barely looked human. When asked to speak, he simply said, I quote, "I wished to blow the king and all his subjects to God." He meant it. There was no I can see you laughing.
My man. That's man. Standing there in front of the man. I wish to blow them all.
I'm going to tell you.
Yep.
You want to know why? This is fucking why. He meant it. There was no repentance, no plea for mercy, only conviction.
Damn right.
Well, he stood by what he was doing. He's not going to come out with some cock and bullshit and say, well, it was an accident.
I accidentally put 20 or 36 barrels of gunpowder under the, I thought it was a storage shed.
Yeah, at least he's standing up for his,
he stood, I stand by what I did.
Yep.
I'm going to take the punishment. Let's go. That's it, man. That's a man right there.
Yeah, he owned it.
Yeah. Others spoke at greater length. Thomas Wintour admitted his guilt, but begged for forgiveness for his family, which I can understand. Sir Everard Digby, the only one of rank, claimed he acted for the good of the church. The judges were unmoved, of course. Verdict, guilty. Sentence, to be hung, drawn, and quartered. Oof.
What does drawn mean?
So you're like drawn up. You're like...
Oh, okay. So you're
ropes.
Displayed.
So you're hung, but your arms and legs are like drawn out, like they're pulling them apart. Like, yeah. And then you're quartered. You're quartered, so then they can stick pieces of your body all across so people can see them.
So all your limbs come off. Jeez.
I do believe that I got that correct. If I did not, please comment and tell me I'm an idiot. Say, you got that wrong.
Yeah, I never knew what drawn meant, like within the, hung, drawn, and quartered. So they were told the details without mercy. Each man would be drawn on a hurdle to the gallows, hanged until half dead. Well, here we go. We're going to find out what it means.
Oh, yeah. God, I did write it all down, didn't I? I've been doing a lot of scripts and my brain gets muddled. So
that's all right. Well, each man would be drawn on a hurdle to the gallows, hanged until half dead, then cut down. His genitals removed and burnt before his eyes. Jesus.
Yeah. Here's your cock and balls being burned up. Just look at it. That's brutal.
Then they would have the bowels torn out, their hearts shown to the crowd, and body quartered for public display. The court clerk read the sentence. No one interrupted. Even the prisoners stayed silent. That is gross.
Brutal.
I mean, I wouldn't want to watch that. I wouldn't want to have hanging and drawn and quartered like in this day and age. But
they had no TV back then.
Hanging, yes, but drawn and quartered, no. I wouldn't want to see gruesome stuff like that.
Having their dangly bits cut off and burned before their very eyes.
Yeah, no, thank you. I wouldn't want to sort of look at that. Gross.
The executions were set for the 30th and 31st of January, 1606. A stage was built at St. Paul's Churchyard for the first group: Sir Everard Digby, Robert Wintour, John Grant, and Thomas Bates. Thousands came to watch, probably like tons of people came out. Children climbed, like the children were watching too.
Children, Jesus Christ.
It's an event, man.
What an England we used to have.
Yeah. Vendors sold pies and hot wine. Like, get your hot wine before the genitals get ripped off and burned. Yeah. It was part punishment, part entertainment. England's first public lesson in how treason ends. Digby was first. The hangman gave him a short drop, long enough for pain, not death. When cut down, he was still conscious as they disemboweled him. His final words were, "Forgive me, Jesus." All I can see is Rachel's face right now. She's just like, oh, God.
I'm just like, this is grim.
Grim. Love it. So Grant, half blind from the Whole Beach explosion, screamed once and then fell silent. The crowd roared its approval.
Yeah, being half blind, he wouldn't be able to see his balls being not properly. Wouldn't be able to see his balls being all chopped off.
Chopped off. Well, he'll feel it all right.
Ugh, good.
Dangly bits going.
Well, I would just expect like the shock to kick in, and then you wouldn't feel nothing. Do you know what I mean?
They perfected the torture and execution and stuff. You know, they knew what they were doing.
Glad we don't live in them day and ages. Well, the next day, the 31st of January, 1606, Fawkes, Thomas, Wintour, Ambrose Rookwood, and Robert Keyes were executed outside the old palace yard, directly opposite the Parliament building that they'd tried to destroy. Fawkes was the last. I can imagine they've kept him to last.
Yeah, they got to keep old John Johnson for the last, so he can watch all of it.
Too weak to climb the ladder unaided, he leaned on the scaffold rail, trembling. When the hangman placed the noose around his neck, he whispered a prayer. Then, in one final act of defiance, he leapt from the ladder, snapping his neck before they could cut him down. He denied the crowd its spectacle. The man who had almost burnt England chose his own ending.
Yes.
He's like, I'm not going to be killed by you. I will take my own life.
Yep.
I will leave this planet when I choose.
Yep. He's like, you ain't killing me. I'm killing myself. See ya.
Crikey.
Yep. That takes some strength as well. You know what's going to happen? And he's just like, nope. I don't think, and the last ounce of his strength he had left, he's like, see you later, boys.
Yeah, not giving them the satisfaction of taking his life.
Yep.
Bloody hell.
One last middle finger to the fucking man. Excellent. The remains of all 8 men were butchered and displayed on pikes above Westminster Hall and other city gates. Their heads rotted in public for months, a warning to anyone who might dream of rebellion. Among the onlookers, reactions were mixed. Some cheered the justice of it. Others, especially London's hidden Catholics, watched in silence, mourning not the crime, but the faith that had driven it. The government had staged the perfect horror show, a spectacle that turned treason into theater and suffering into propaganda. The Gunpowder Plot had been crushed, but its story had only just begun.
The executions were meant to end the story, but in truth, the Gunpowder Plot was only beginning to burn. In the weeks following the hangings, Parliament ordered special prayers of thanksgiving to be read in every church in England. Ministers thundered from pulpits about the miraculous deliverance of the king and nation. Bells rang across London. Bonfires were lit in the streets, not in grief, but in triumph. The very next year, the Thanksgiving Act of 1606 made it law that every 5th of November, ministers should hold a service of thanksgiving for the nation's preservation from treason. It was the birth of Bonfire Night.
Yeah, see? You do have Thanksgiving. Like, we have Thanksgiving, was it the third Thursday of November or whatever? Something like that. Can't remember. It's in November.
That's why I say, remember the 5th of November.
But your act of Thanksgiving was that not everybody got blown up in Parliament. Ours is like, oh, the Native Americans, please help us. And we had Thanksgiving. They didn't blow us up.
Madness.
Well, at first, the rituals were strictly political. Church bells, sermons, prayers for the king. But as the years passed, the tone changed. Bonfires grew larger. Effigies were added, first of the Pope in the 1670s, then of Guy Fawkes by the late 18th century. Children carried torches through the street shouting, "Remember, remember, the 5th of November," and begging for coins to burn the guy.
Yeah, I remember.
Burn the guy. Yeah. What began as an act of state thanksgiving slowly turned into a people's carnival, half celebration, half warning.
For England's Catholics, though, there was nothing to celebrate. The government's response was swift and unforgiving. New laws required Catholics to swear the oath of allegiance, denying the Pope's authority to depose monarchs. Fines for recusancy were doubled. Priests were hunted again. Any hope of peaceful coexistence was gone. the Gunpowder Plot gave the Crown exactly what it needed: justification. For the next century and more, Catholicism in England became synonymous with treason, a religion turned into a crime.
The paranoia ran deep. Every royal crisis, every rebellion, every rumor of unrest, people saw the shadow of the Gunpowder Plot behind it. The idea that enemies could live unseen among loyal subjects haunted the English imagination. King James, ever the propagandist, made sure of it. He commissioned sermons, pamphlets, and broadsides retelling the story in lurid detail, emphasizing divine providence and royal deliverance. Yep, say God's on my side. Just saying don't try to do anything because God's on our side and we'll crush you. Effective.
Well, painters depicted Fawkes as the devil's servant, crouched beside barrels of flame. Playwrights turned the plot into theatre, and children were taught the rhyme before they could write their own names. The Gunpowder Plot had failed, but it achieved something that neither Catesby nor King James had intended. It united Protestant England, not through faith, but through fear.
By the late 1600s, bonfire night observances had spread across England. In towns from York to Plymouth, people built towering fires and filled the air with the crackle of burning wood and the shouts of celebration. The meaning shifted with the times. For some, it remained a patriotic reminder of the king's salvation. For others, it became an excuse for chaos, a night for fireworks, drunkenness, and masks.
Yeah, I'm on that second side.
Yeah, having fun and fireworks and all that.
Well, by the late 18th century, effigies of Guy Fawkes began to replace those of the Pope. The man once branded England's arch traitor became its annual scapegoat. His straw figure was paraded through the streets, stuffed with firecrackers and thrown onto the flames to cheers of the crowd. The irony was complete. The man who had tried to burn Parliament was now burned every year in effigy, his name shouted by the very people who once feared him.
400 years later, the fire still burns, though the meaning has changed again. In time, the villain became a symbol. As the centuries turned, the line between fact and folklore began to blur. The Gunpowder Plot slipped from living memory into legend. What had once been treason became a story, then a ritual, then almost a game.
Well, by the Georgian era, bonfire night was no longer about Parliament or the king. It was a night of noise and fire. Fireworks crackling like musket shots, barrels rolling through cobbled streets, effigies of Guy Fawkes dragged on carts by children shouting "penny for a guy." Across England, fires burned, not in thanksgiving, but in celebration.
Somewhere along the way, the purpose sort of inverted. The man meant to embody betrayal became a kind of folk hero. Not loved, but admired for his audacity. Hell yeah.
100%. I feel that, even now, like, you just,
Yeah. He's just like, I'm defiant. But it's also his like convictions. You can admire him because he just was like, this is, I think is right. And I'm going to do it. And when he got busted, he's like, yep, sure did. And got executed. He's like, hey, this is what's going to happen to me. They all knew that was going to probably going to happen, possibly, but they were all going to get killed.
Yeah, they would get caught. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were young. They're like in their 30s and whatever, like, come on, fighting for a cause.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so a single conspirator standing against a system that had crushed his faith. It was a transformation the government could never have imagined.
Even his name changed meaning. Guy, once a proper noun, tied to a single would-be bomber, became a common word for a grotesque-looking person, and later for any man, any face in the crowd. The traitor became the template.
Yeah. It's like, oh, it's that guy. It's that guy I know. That's crazy how he just kind of changes, and to see that over the time, that's pretty cool. But in the 20th century, the mask replaced the effigy. The writer Alan Moore and illustrator David Lloyd reimagined Fawkes in their 1980s graphic novel V for Vendetta, not as a terrorist, but as a symbol of rebellion against tyranny. Their masked vigilante fought an oppressive state. his face forever hidden behind a stylized grin. I love V for Vendetta.
I think I've watched it, but I don't remember. I mean, it was a long time ago, so I don't really remember.
Yeah, so it has like Natalie Portman and Hugo Weaving. He played Elrond in Lord of the Rings. He played guy with the Guy Fawkes mask on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, when the story was adapted for film in 2005, the image had caught fire again. The Guy Fawkes mask became shorthand for defiance, worn by protesters from London to Hong Kong, by online activists and anarchists alike. The man who once plotted to destroy Parliament now stood in effigy and icon for freedom of speech, digital privacy, and resistance to political corruption. 4 centuries after his death, Guy Fawkes had outlined every king, every government, and every law that condemned him.
And that's like one of the things from the film I've really liked, where it's like, you know, people could be killed, but you could die or whatever, but words will last forever. Words will last, you know, like, I'm not quoting it accurately, but it's like, that's what happened. And that was like the essence. Like they all died, but Guy Fawkes and his image and how they use it in defiance of tyranny and corrupt governments and, you know, overreach.
Don't let me go onto that subject in this day and age.
Yeah, you can think of like, you know, stuff that's happening and you're like, that's kind of, you know, they were like being oppressed by the government and of their faith and their freedom, you know. So
yeah, I do think people would rebel against stuff like that.
yeah. And it's easy to forget in the haze of fireworks and carnival laughter that the real story was soaked in blood. The Gunpowder Plot wasn't rebellion in the abstract. It was a plan for mass murder. It cost lives, ruined families, and reignited an era of persecution that scarred England for generations. But like all great crimes, it was something bigger than the men who committed it.
Well, each November, as the fires burn and the rockets bloom, the echoes remain. Bonfire Night is part celebration, part exorcism, a reminder of what might have been. Children still chant the old rhyme without thinking about what it means. Remember, remember the 5th of November, gunpowder, treason, and plot. I see no reason why gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. It's less a warning now than a melody, a ghost of fear turned into ritual joy, but the lesson beneath, it still flickers.
Good stuff. Well, England learned on that cold November morning in 1605 that its greatest dangers didn't always come from foreign enemies or open war. Sometimes they came from within, from the quiet fanaticism of ordinary men who believed that violence could cleanse the world. 400 years later, that truth still burns quietly beneath the fireworks. It began as treason, almost turned into mass murder, and ended as a legend, a crime that failed, but a story that never died.
What a story. Well, that was the story of Guy Fawkes and the Gunpowder, Treason, and Plot.
Yeah. I thought it would be, I saw that our release date was the 5th of November. I was like, this is perfect. This is the perfect time to for anybody who doesn't know the whole story.
History, a historic crime, you know.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's not murder, but the way it really killed the Catholic movement and trying to have religious freedom and how it really hurt them in years and years. Like,
well, you say, like, obviously it's not murder. Obviously we've covered like where there's murder cases that result in death, but it was a murder plot. So, you know, there is that murder aspect within this episode that we've done. So, yeah. And they died. The people died.
Yeah. But they were fighting. And I think that's also a thing where depends on which side you're on. They were fighting for their religious freedom and from oppression from the state. You could say that they were murdered by the state for trying to fight for themselves. But I mean, it was a bit excessive, I think, trying to because that would have blown up everyone in the building, blown the building apart, blown up people outside of the area of what they were trying to do. And they were just like, we got to do it for the future of the faith and, you know, religious freedom and all that.
Yeah. I mean, in this day and age, I think, you know, over the centuries, obviously religious freedoms in England, to follow whichever religion you wish to. It's not dictated to now. It's very protected. People are protected in, what religions they want to follow, which is great.
Yeah, just like America, where with the First Amendment, it's freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion.
But these are important things in a society, and I think that, we should never forget and never lose these rights because they are so important, so important.
And that's why their act of defiance with Guy Fawkes and the other conspirators, that's why people use it, because it shows that you are fighting for your own freedom, your own human rights, and it's showing them, hey, we're here, and you mask up. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. How it's still 400 years later still being used to fight for injustice.
This legend, this situation from decades and decades and centuries ago, is never ever going to go away. We instill it in our children. We tell our children about what Guy Fawkes is, and give them a gist of what it is about. I think they learn it in school as well.
Yeah, and if anyone listening has never seen the V for Vendetta, shame on you. Go watch it.
I mean, it's pretty old now, so I'm sure that a lot of them have watched it, but if you haven't.
Or watch it again. It's great. So, but anyways, if you enjoyed listening to our ramblings of the Guy Fawkes story, please give us a follow, and also a like or whatever, comment, tell us what you think, how you interpret it. Did you go and watch V for Vendetta like I just said? It really helps us, with all the engagement and that, and also like reviews, like giving us 5-star review. Takes 30 seconds. Just go on there and say, yep, did it. Guy Fawkes, cool, whatever. And then also find us at Murder Most British on Instagram and TikTok, and MMB Podcast on Facebook.
We've also got a link tree for everywhere you can follow us down below. Until next week, stay safe and stay curious.
Any for the Guy. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.